Robin was right when he said that across the Palestinian diaspora around the world, there are plenty of Palestinians who don't want to settle for a two-state solution. He was also right when he said that many Palestinians within the current Palestinian territories don't want a two-state solution. In fact, they want full rights to return to Israel. But in fact, there are plenty of people within Israel, plenty of extremists who don't want a two-state solution either, and who think that the entirety of the Palestinian territory should belong exclusively to Israel. The best way forward is not to pander to either extremist groups. It's to recognise that some sort of moderate consensus has been reached between those two extremes, and to try and forge a way forward based on those voices of moderacy, those voices who are actually looking for a workable, pragmatic solution rather than the firebrands at either end of the spectrum. First of all, I'm going to do 3 points of rebuttal. The first point, no thanks, is it realistic for Palestine to seek full rights of return to Israel? Second of all, how would Israel react to a two-state solution? And finally, what are Palestine's right to statehood, and does it have adequate legal protection as it is? So first of all, what we heard from Robin is that the best way forward is not to settle for a two-state solution, because it's possible that perhaps a one-state solution could be reached in the future, but the one-state solution that he wanted was not to allow Israel to continue to exist as it is, but in fact to allow Israel basically to disintegrate and for Palestine to be restored in its entirety. There are a couple of reasons that we think that that's not a very strong point. The first is because Hamas and Fatah, which represent the vast majority of views of Palestinians, have agreed that a two-state solution is the best way forward.
On the contrary,
no thanks. We think that support among the Palestinian communities is in fact extremely strong. Secondly, because if you start to pander to people who don't want a two-state solution, then those people that you're empowering and listening to are firebrands like Islamic Jihad, who say that there is absolutely no way that they will ever accept anything less than a Palestine that existed before 1948. Secondly, they wanted to talk about a right of return, but we say that this is just utterly unrealistic for no other reason than Israel controls its own immigration policy and doesn't allow Palestinian refugees to come back to Israel, so we just don't think that this is viable. But even aside from whether this is like a pragmatic way forward, we actually also think that Israel has a right to exist as a state, and that there are plenty of Jewish people with a claim to the land there. They have now established a place in international relations, and this would only lead to persecution against Jews in that territory and in other parts of the world if you expel them. No, thank you. Secondly, how would Israel respond to this two-state solution? Well, first of all, we found it weird that they wanted to talk about an extremist Israeli reaction, when in fact the counter-model that they were proposing was something much more extreme, which is the termination of the existence of Israel altogether. Well, they went on to say that, Israel would basically go ballistic over the establishment of a Palestinian state. We told you a couple of reasons why that's not true. The first is that they're simply not able to do it under the framework of international law that exists. So they would no longer be able to intercept a flotilla of boats carrying aid, because the reception of aid would now be governed by Palestinian policy rather than Israeli policy. They would no longer be able to send settlers into Palestinian territory, because that would be an act of war that was referred to the United Nations Security Council. They would not be able to withhold taxes and other economic benefits from Palestine, because Palestine would control its own economy. They said that, and as well, as I'm going to explain in my substantive material, we think that the political landscape within Israel is changing, and that means that Israel wouldn't react in this way. The final point of rebuttal is whether Palestine currently has adequate legal protections and whether it would gain greater legal protections under our model. First thing Robin said was that Palestine can go to the ICC. Sadly, I'm doing a PhD in international law, and I can tell you that that's not true, and that only states can refer matters to international law. No thanks. Secondly, he said that the International Court of Justice has said that, no thanks, has said that the occupation of Palestine is illegal. No, it hasn't. It said that all the occupation does is create a state of war that means that Israel has to comply with international humanitarian law, and it's not doing that. But finally, these guys said that before you can do anything to intervene for a Palestinian state, you would need United Nations Security Council consent. You know, it's a lot more likely that you get that when one country invades another than when Israel is just able to say, hey, it's our own territory, back off, guys. Chris.
Man, fundamentally, the problem with opening government today is they've assumed that this is a rules-based organization. The UN is actually a politically based organization that has no political will to act on these issues, so why would anything change if the state was created?
We think that there's plenty of political will to act on this situation. For example, as Ashish told you in Prime Minister, even within the United States, who has always been Israel's most staunch ally, 60% of Americans said that they disapproved on the United States not voting in favour of recognition of even partial independence. We think that there is plenty of political will. I'm going to talk about the changed political reality within Israel and then the changed geopolitical environment in the region. First of all, Israel. There is an upcoming election on the 22nd of January next year, and we think it would be extraordinarily beneficial if the Conservative coalition that consists of Netanyahu and Lieberman and the cabinet officials from parties like Shas were disbanded. The reason why that coalition, who has encouraged settlements and who has encouraged aid on trade and aid, the reason why they've been able to pursue those policies is for two reasons. First of all, because there has been no international legal barrier or even political machinery to stop them doing so. And secondly, because they've been able to forge a narrative that they have been able to build an international consensus around these policies. This vote would dismantle both their ability to carry out these policies and that myth that there is international support for these policies. Secondly, we think that the Arab region is one that is changing rapidly and is going to have new regimes emerging, like the Morsi regime. We think this is a critical time for Israel to establish positive relationships with those new regimes, who are likely to be forged largely based on a pan-Islamic identity. And for all those reasons, we're very proud to propose.